McClain, coming aft us 1 now.
Yep. Got a line 2 with master up 1 down 2 on the line. Cyclics boosted with mass multiplications. Got increased forces on the pedals. And collecting is boost. Go ahead and center the switch.
Back to center.
And then forward.
Alright, going forward now.
Open the doors. I'm securing the right.
Secure the left.
Cabin when you're ready.
Secure.
Okay. And our batch back.
Eagle Tower, good morning. Tower 272, northern Mike, present position. Take off to the west. Down step.
Nice. Good to the 5 degrees nozzle. Power's out. Yep, looking good.
Okay, there's a rock right in front of us, so we definitely would have to prove that.
The Artemis mission set has been created to return humans to the surface of the moon by the end of this decade, looking at 2024. The best way to understand how to be successful is to go back and figure out what we learned in the 60s when we did those Apollo landings. And so in pulling out all the debriefs, we looked at lessons learned from a crew training perspective. What did it look like? What did it feel like? What skills did they need? Were there skills that they felt that they were lacking? And what we need to do is make sure that when we go back to the moon, we're even more prepared than they were. We have a wealth of knowledge from their debrief. So a couple of things that we recognized that we can train using helicopters in degraded visual environments like we have here at the high altitude training site in Colorado. Visual illusions is something that's very common to helicopter pilots. When your eyes are not agreeing to what your instruments is actually happening. So maybe your height looks different, your velocity looks different. And so these are some of the things that we can train up here at HAATS. So for instance, one illusion would be not having anything to compare size to. So when you're landing on a runway, there's cars around the runway, there's buildings around the runway. You can kind of gauge how big things are as you're getting closer to the surface. When you're landing to a completely new environment, there's no man-made structures, there's nothing familiar, and you see a rock in your landing area. Is that rock the size of a basketball? Is it the size of a car, or is it the size of a building? That's actually something we can replicate up here in the mountains of Colorado, is landing to very unfamiliar places with unknown size of objects. And so Major Moghbeli and I have been tasked to come up here, talk to these folks that work at HAATS with the Colorado National Guard. They've been really supportive, bending over backwards to create some of these environments for us. And we are laying out a training plan that other astronauts can come up and go through to get familiar with some of these illusions and flying in a degraded visual environment.
It's beautiful out here flying mountains, but as Lieutenant Colonel McClain said, there are several things that carry over for us training-wise. In addition to what she mentioned, also brownout, that's something we see out here in the helicopters or in the winter months, whiteout, and that's something that carries over to those lunar landings. The Apollo astronauts all experienced some form of brownout as they came down to the surface. And one of the most important things that they train here at HAATS that's really important for us is teamwork, the crew, and how we talk to each other, and making sure, she's expecting to hear something from me if I'm the non-flying pilot, and vice versa, how we can get those comms down so that they're succinct and we know exactly what we're expecting to hear and the call outs that we're expecting.